If you want to ride an eagle into battle, you might want to stick with Lord of the Rings. However, if fantasy isn't up your alleyway, I have the perfect substitute for you, the Bf 109 F4. The Friedrich came out of the German experiences with the Emil. While the Emil was still competitive in 1940 during the Battle for France, the development for the next German fighter was gaining pace. The main concern of German aeronautical engineers was to provide Germany with a new plane, one that outclasses the new Allied fighters, which were designed to outperform the older Emil. For this, three main concerns were on the table. First, a new engine needed to be implemented into the new design to provide the power to outperform Allied fighters in terms of speed and acceleration. Second, the plane needed to have enough punch to quickly dispatch its enemies, some of which, like the Hurricanes or Spitfire Mark I, had a massive amount of guns at their disposal. Third, the plane should not radically change the fighting style the German pilots were used to, so to prevent time-consuming retraining. What came out at the end was nothing short of spectacular. To meet the necessary power required to propel the Bf 109 to new heights, the new Daimler Blend 601E engine was drawn into the development. The engine would provide up to 1,350 horsepower, outclassing the E3 by roughly 200 horsepower. From the F3 onwards, the Friedrich would also feature larger propeller blades that would benefit the plane at higher altitudes. In order to successfully integrate the engine into the Bf 109 frame and to keep the Bf 109 pure so that pilots would be able to quickly understand the newer version, the plane had to be modified, giving it its final, famous look, one German engineers only deviated from slightly in the years to come. In terms of armament, German engineers were on a bit of an odyssey. While the Friedrich from the F0 version featured two 7.92mm machine guns, the optimal armament planned for the nose was not easily found. The earliest versions featured the same cannon as the later Emils, the 20mm MG FF-M, the modified version able to fire the Minengeschoss. Later, with the F2, this cannon would be substituted with a 15mm MG151. Both design choices were not well received by the pilots, and this made up for the most criticism the plane received thus far. While the plane itself performed admirably and German pilots did praise the new power they wielded, they were highly critical of the aforementioned armament, considering it a downgrade from the earlier Emil. What use was a fighter that outperformed its foe, but then lacked the means to shoot it down? Until this problem was fixed, it was not uncommon for German pilots to actually stick to the Emil, even though it was a less powerful plane. The F4 fixed all of this, and while it might not have started, it certainly reinforced the love affair German pilots had with the Bf 109, an affair that would also give serious hindrance to the later implementation of the Focke-Wulf 190. The F4 is often seen as the zenith of the Bf 109 design, a majestic plane outperforming all its contemporaries and utterly devastating in the hands of a competent pilot. The F4 held the much appreciated 20mm MG151-20, and this cannon would also quell some of the concerns German pilots had about the earlier versions of the plane. However, the discussion was never off the table whether the Emil or the Friedrich actually had more power in terms of armament. Indeed, even in the game, the Bf 109 F4 lacks some punch against twin-engined heavy fighters. However, this is also due to the present damage model of these planes. Yet, while later Bf 109s might have featured heavier armament and a more powerful engine, the F4 is often seen as the Bf 109 which offered the best flying characteristics with phenomenal potential, waiting to be unlocked by a skilled pilot. If you have seen my Bf 109E free guide, you will know that in my previous guide I mentioned the need for Bf 109E pilots to become acquainted with energy fighting. The Emil might be a good turn against some enemies, But unless you have started using energy fighting as your preferred fighting style in the Bf-109E, you will have some trouble with the Friedrich. The Friedrich might outturn a few allied fighters, and at around 6,500 meters you will have a hard time dropping under 300 kilometers an hour, but it is not something that you will want to do in this plane, as it is a pure breed energy fighter. Before we talk about energy fighting, however, let's chew on some numbers. The optimal altitude for the F4 lies in the 6,000 meter range, and indeed, when flying this plane, safe from taking off, your immediate concern is to hit that altitude. If you see an enemy closing at you before you reach 6,000 meters and he is not in a jet, then you did something wrong. If the map is built so that you do not reach this altitude while going towards the enemy at your optimal climbing speed of 250 to 270 kilometers an hour, then nothing will stop you to make a small detour. Once you hit 6,000 meters, your options are open and you can slowly work your way to the bottom by always targeting the highest enemy. Similar to the Bf-109E, the F4 starts to shake at around 770 kilometers an hour, with its wing flying off at around 850 kilometers an hour. Of course, this is in a straight off dive to the ground, and you will have to take into account G-forces when making high speed turns. This gives it a better diving potential than, for example, the Yaks or the Las, which you will be able to exploit if you need to flee from a reasonable altitude, but actual maneuverability will be restricted at higher speeds. The Bf-109 is not a dedicated boom zoomer, and while you might pick off unsuspecting or untrained pilots like this, it is not the optimal way to fly this plane, as eventually many factors will constrict you. This is especially obvious when fighting against a dedicated boom and zoomer piloted by a competent player, as the Bf-109 F4 will have a hard time seizing the initiative in such a situation. So, energy fighting. The Bf-109 F4 does it superbly. In many ways, this plane trades kinetic energy and potential energy like no other aircraft. The plane takes off like a startled rabbit, and when you put it in a straight line and give him more emergency power, it'll do so with a big adrenaline kick. If you have an enemy above you who is possibly going to engage you and you have no support or way to get to him first, put the plane into a straight line and exploit the acceleration so that you can go over to the offensive after his initial attack. When your enemy is evading you horizontally, instead of following him in a straight up turn, use high or low yo-yos to once again get on his 6. As well as that, loops or semi-loops will always be your friend. However, be cautious when doing these, as you momentarily become an easy target, sometimes even for your actual prey. It goes without saying that during these maneuvers, you should quickly check around and also look on your radar to see if any new enemy is approaching. Now, before we move on to the weapons, let's have a quick look at the cockpit. When using more emergency power, be sure to keep an eye on the coolant temperature located in the middle of the screen. The Bf-109 F4 features good pilot protection with 6mm of armor and a steel plate behind the pilot. The side view is acceptable, but the beams do get in the way sometimes, especially with the front window that also features an exchangeable reinforced armor to protect the pilot in a head-on. However, if you have the impression that you are now immune, no, you are not. You will never be immune to pilot snipes, and you should not expect invulnerability even if the cockpit is well armored. The rear view is, especially with the absence of track AR, abysmal. Now, let's move on to the big concern that many players have, and that is armament. Now, the already mentioned concerns of actual German fighter pilots aside, the Bf-109 F4 does have a hard punch. With its guns positioned in the nose, aiming is relatively easy, as once again gun conversion only has an influence on vertical targeting. Coming from the Bf-109E3, this is a very welcome change. Compared to the older version, the 7.92 millimeter loses 50% of its actual ammo count, which is due to the installation of the nose cannon. And this gives the player 500 shots per gun. While still relatively good in terms of ammo load, the effect of these weapons is limited, and you can't hose them around as much as you did with the Emil. The 20mm cannon, however, complements the MGs, and it is the true damage dealer of this aircraft. With 200 rounds, you will have enough ammo to take down a few enemies, provided you keep trigger discipline. For your MGs, I would recommend Omni or Stealth, depending on your own taste and skill level when it comes to aiming. The cannon's ammo choice, however, is a bit tricky. While I personally have no issue with the Minengeschoss, various players have and continue to report that it does not inflict any damage for them and that they prefer the armor target choice. As the Minengeschoss does the job for me, I see no reason to change, however. As such, two options once again present themselves, which is air and stealth. I highly encourage you to give some serious thought into stealth ammunition, as your MGs can function as your traces as long as you take into account bullet speed. As you will see in the upcoming footage, the stealth ammo can be utterly deadly for unsuspecting enemies, especially in a head-on against planes with a short conversion setting. Personally, and as you can see, I use stealth on my F4, but air on my F4 Tropical. Now onwards to the topic of bombs. As you have seen by now, my bombs are unlocked and ready to be installed. This heralds back from my days in arcade. You do not, and I repeat, you do not want to load bombs on an BF109 F4 at the start of a match. It might be a great climber, but weighing yourself down by at least another 250 kilograms will seriously reduce your chances of getting to 6,000 meters in time. Also, if you are thinking about quickly taking out some ground targets and then climbing up, then I ask you to look at the map and locate the nearest bombable ground target. That's right, they are usually right in the middle of the map, right where all the enemies will converge on you should you be below them. What a waste of a good plane. Now, ladies and gentlemen, onwards to the footage, the BF109 F4. So here we are flying together with our one subscriber, BF109 F4s, both sides, using the aforementioned setup here. As you can see, omnipurpose for machine guns, stealth for cannons, 300 meters of convergence vertical targeting on. That is simply the range that is optimal for me. Even then, vertical targeting is the only thing that really is important here when it comes to gun convergence. Now, the camo scheme I'm using here, and I'm just quickly going to mention this, is not the one that I usually use. I don't know why the Battle for Stalingrad camo was used actually in this battle. It's sort of, I didn't check it, and then the plane just took off with this one. Usually I'm using the white camo, which I prefer. However, after this battle, I am actually going to permanently switch to this camo, and you already saw it in hangar with all the decals that I personally use. Why? Well, you'll see in this battle why. Now, as you can see, we are climbing quite heavily here. I went into a little straight there. You can see the speed gained was quite fast. And we're hitting 4,000 meters now. Spitfire roughly on the same altitude as we are. And we're hitting war emergency power as well to get up to that altitude. As you can see at the moment, I'm actually using TAS, not EAS. I switched back to EAS recently, but as I mentioned in my introduction, you want to be climbing at maximal 270 kilometers an hour at EAS, indicated airspeed. Now let's see what's going on at the moment. We're hitting 5,000 meters, and I am looking for targets that are higher up than me. Slightly too steep climb here. I'm actually slower than I should be. A little bit of criticism for myself here. And now we can see the big threat, and that is the Corsair. The Corsair at the moment, of course, with a flight model that makes this plane a little bit more competitive than it actually should be. Of course, it's a great aircraft, but it should perform as it did in real life and not better. Below we have a King Cobra and another Corsair. There were actually quite a few Corsairs in this battle, which is always the greatest threat that we have. However, these guys do not seem to be concerned with these two F4s at higher altitudes, and they're going for targets that are below us. That makes us the king in the sky at the moment. 6,000 meters reached. Now we can go on to the attack. Of course, this is the rule you can break if you have to. However, I would seriously recommend everyone to first get to 6,000 meters and then start looking for enemies. As you can see, I also made a detour which put me out of the view for most of these enemies, so they didn't really care about me. They went for other targets. Now I was going to go for one of these Corsairs right now, and this one presents himself as a best target. I'm gaining up quite fast now. He's zooming. He used some of his speed already. He sees me last minute. Maybe I should have just used my stealth ammunition there, but I do get a couple of hits into him. And now with the remaining speed that I have, I'm going to be zooming away. There's a Corsair behind me going to be picked off, or at least attacked by my ally here. And he also gets a critical hit on that Corsair, so that is good. Now the Corsair that we just attacked, he is down below. He will have to climb back up in order to join the fight. He is out of the battle as such for some time, and we can go for this guy who has been critically damaged by my ally. But then we can see this guy actually returned and he's on a reasonable altitude again. So let's go for him. He doesn't see me coming. I get his right early on. And although that is not the damage I want to inflict, I would have preferred to actually destroy him. That is what we have to settle for our first attack. Let's see what else is going on. That Corsair is out of the fight as well. He seems to be going back to base. That Spitfire might be a presentable target. We have a King Cobra down below as well. Corsair at their base disappeared out of view, and now let's follow these guys. We're not going to go straight down here. We have a couple of bandits below, and even though I can zoom out of there, I don't want to be giving up my altitude just yet. And as you can see, this Corsair starts to climb again. Probably he lost his spot on me, so I'm going to surprise him here. Get a couple of more hits on him, and this time it's his left aileron, and he seems to be going down there. I see a little bit of smoke and I immediately look for another target, although I am not actually sure if this Corsair is going down. With the remaining speed I have, I make a loop trying to get some more altitude so that I can, there we go, he is destroyed, so that I can get a little bit more energy in this dive here. Of course, energy fighting, you always switch from kinetic energy, which is speed, to potential energy, that is altitude. And this is something that this Corsair maybe should also have thought about. But my approach is rather bad. As you can see, that was not a very well set up approach, so he will live for a little bit longer. Now I'm in a situation that I don't want to be in. Although I do have the speed required to get out of this, for now it will take a lot of climbing, and also against a Corsair who's climbing a bit too good for what it should be. So in the long run, he actually might be getting a problem. But yeah, as you can see, this climbing duel could have gone on for some time had my allies not intervened, and this gives me the perfect opportunity to once again strike from a reasonable altitude of roughly 2,000 meters. Going for this King Cobra now, he presents himself as a better target. Now let's see if we can pick him off before he goes for that Emil. And here we can see the problem with the Messerschmitt. I was on 600 kilometers an hour TAS, and I could not really get that plane to face where I wanted it. I couldn't get the nose where I wanted it to be. And as such, I break off, and somehow both the Corsair and the King Cobra decide, yes, let's go for that Emil, and let's completely ignore the Friedrich that's behind us, the two Friedrichs that's behind them actually. So we're going to use that to our advantage. I'm going to go for the Corsair now. He's turning, he's giving me more or less a good shot, but I don't take advantage of it. Before I bleed off more energy, I'm going to go for a little bit of a loop here. As you can see, the Corsair is turning, so I adjust my loop to come right behind him and blast him from behind, and he is burning. Critical hit there again due to the fire, and he's going down. Similarly to that, the Era Cobra was taken out by the Friedrich, that is my wingman, so we have protected our Emil over there. Let's see what's still in the battle. We can see a Spitfire still in battle, two Corsairs it seems, and of course the most dreaded ally of all, and that is, well, what was his name? I can't even remember his name. Shoei? Yeah, that's him, the nasty bugger. Anyway, even though the ammo should still be relatively high in my plane, I am going to go for a landing now. I don't see any enemy that is here going to be of danger to me. I still have a good amount of fuel, doesn't matter. I want to have full ammo. As well as that, my wingman is going to stay in the air. He's going to provide air cover. So it really is the perfect moment to go for a landing to restock and refuel. And Shoei nails another guy. Shoei really, this AI, Shoei, he's, wow. It's the aces of the aces. Anyway, that aside, let's check again our rear. Is somebody coming? As you can see, I am decreasing the speed of this plane, and this is not the moment where I want to be caught off guard by a Corsair or a Spitfire. Certainly not. Keep my radar in view at all times when going here for the landing. Deploy my landing gear, and let's touch down soon. Now, historically speaking, the landing with a Messerschmitt is always, a Messerschmitt 109 that is always something that is considered to have been something a bit tricky, especially on grass airfields that have been mudded up basically by a lot of rain. And that is because the landing gear was quite weak on this plane, and if you came in with a little bit too much speed or a bad angle, or if you simply had bad luck and one of your wheels would get stuck a little bit too long in the mud, then you can have some serious problems. Now let's see what's still left on the team. One of these Corsairs, no, that's actually a Hellcat. I'm sorry, that was a Hellcat. Seems to have loaded bombs and rockets. So we know we don't have to worry about that guy because he's going for ground targets. That leaves the Corsair open and the Spitfire. I think it actually was a Spitfire Mark 16, was it? I can't remember. I only briefly saw him. Now, as you saw there, the Emil loaded up a bomb. And remember what I said earlier, do not load bombs at the beginning of a match. Now, this is not the beginning of the match, so you could get away with it if your team has a serious advantage. If you look at the team roster, however, we do not have a serious advantage. So I tell my ally here to drop his bomb and to climb. And he tells us to stick together. However, we can't stick together if he doesn't climb. Now, I don't know if he actually misunderstood what I said. When I said drop the bomb, maybe he meant that drop the bomb ASAP on a ground target, which is obviously not what I meant. I meant drop the bomb right now. But the damage is already done. Whether he ignores my advice or not doesn't really matter anymore when the outcome is obvious. I'm not going to be able to cover a target like this if I want to stay competitive, and as such I turn away and I start climbing towards my my wingman up there. And I also tell this to my Emil friend down there that we cannot cover him if he's down there, but he ignores us, so yeah. Now, as we can see, AI was shot down by a Corsair, which is some vital intel, because that tells us that this Corsair is probably at a very low altitude and will take some time until he goes up and is able to engage us if we continue to climb. Now, let's turn around here above the airfield and go for the next climb. No bandits in sight yet. However, one of our cities was captured by the Americans. Another one is going to fall soon as well, and then we'll just be stuck with B. Now, this is the problem with this map. Sometimes the Allies actually win because the ground targets are taken. And now we have a problem. As you can see right there, Corsair. Luckily, our wingman is above and is able to attack this guy. Now we know where the Spitfire is, and that means that the Spitfire is not a problem at the moment. However, this Corsair is. As we can see, the Emil has already been critically damaged by the Spitfire, and he's going down very, very soon. There we go. Corsair is getting attacked by my wingman. This is what we want, because now this Corsair is not able to attack me. Emil is shot down by the Spitfire. And as we can see, another Corsair is attacking ground targets. Again, vital information, because we know this guy is not going to be helping our foe down below there, that we can see, who is now left undisturbed. Now, take into account the G-force limitations of planes. If you go in a dive and if you make a harsh loop, or if you pull on your elevators hard, or just on your ailerons even, you will have a problem, and that's exactly what happened to my wingman here. However, that aside, he gave me the time I needed. I am now in an advantageous position against this Corsair, and as such, I'm able to attack him without fearing too much of possible repercussions. And as we can see, the Hellcat has arrived at the scene as well and is strafing ground targets. Let's go for this Corsair. We have our approach, cut back the throttle a bit. I don't want to be going too fast. I want to have a stable shot at this guy. Let's see if we can get this. And this is where I start using my stealth ammunition soon. As we can see, this guy is diving away, and I'm trying to anticipate where his plane is going. And in doing so, because I don't have a clear visual, I waste a lot of my ammo, which wasn't very good. And you'll see why it wasn't very good very, very soon. But as you can see, the whole enemy team is down at B, and I'm practically racing towards it. Now, who do we pick up first? That's the big question. Who do we pick up first? Because if we take too long for these guys, one of them is going to have an advantage in altitude at some point, and then the whole battle might be lost. So I decide to simply go down and pick up some speed and get a visual again on my enemies, and I'm going to ignore this Corsair right now. As you can see, the other Corsair here is totally oblivious that we're here, apparently. He's still strafing ground targets, or he thinks it's a job for somebody else. But my approach was not very well set up, especially considering that this is a vital moment right now where everything should work perfectly. Now, stealth ammunition. You saw the drawbacks earlier, you'll see the advantage right now. This Corsair is coming for me. I have nothing else to do than actually attack him. If I don't, I miss my shot. my chance to actually fight him. I get a couple of hits on him. As you can see, I opened fire quite early, and because of his conversion settings, he never even hit me once. However, I got him in front, and I believe, although I don't have a clear confirmation on this, that I did hit his engine. And as such, I'm fairly confident that this Corsair is going back to base or is out of the fight sooner or later. Now the last bogey I spotted was somewhere over here where I'm going towards now. Let's see if there we go. There he is. And he's trailing green smoke. That made it an even easier visual. And there we go. Pilot sniped out of the cockpit. And I received 1 or 2 hits there. Nothing drastic. Again, gun conversions proved to be of the deciding factor in this engagement. Now that Hellcat is still down below and we don't really have to care about him. Now note what I'm doing right now. I know that the Corsair has turned back towards me, the one that I hit earlier where we don't know what kind of critical we have. He is in the clouds, I'm out of the clouds. I'm going to use this. I'm going to make a kind of a loop here. I was trying to go for a loop, but as you can see, some of the damage inflicted actually decreased the capacity of this plane. And I'm going to fly above the clouds, which means that once he spots me and once he flies out of the clouds with my last known position, that he knows where I was, I'm actually going to be above him and behind him. And this is what's going to happen at the moment. As you can see, I can still track him on the radar because I had him selected. And I'm going to turn now. He's below me at 12 o'clock, or 1 o'clock now, and there we have him. As you can see, he didn't know where I was. He was still going for the position where he had me earlier. And now I'm in the advantage and I can make my attack whenever I want to. Wait for a good opportunity. Not even sure if he has seen me yet. So I'm going to go for a full throttle attack here. I want to build up speed. I want to close the distance as soon as possible to surprise this guy. And then he decides to bail out. I don't know, maybe he knew his cause was lost. Maybe his plane had suffered too much damage. Maybe he saw me coming in the last moment and thought, well, he gives up. Whatever, we get the kill, we'll take it. And our job has been made easier once again, because now, from 4, are only 2 left. One of them, Hellcat, no problem. He is never going to be a problem to me at the moment. The important guy is the Spitfire. Where is the Spitfire? I do not know where the Spitfire is, so I'm going to go for this Hellcat. Hopefully, I will build up enough energy in this dive to get me out of a tough spot should the Spitfire turn up eventually. Now let's see. This guy is flying back to base, and that's what we want to prevent. I'll cut back a little bit of throttle. I don't want to be going too fast again. And I lead my target here. Not the hits that I wanted, and as you can see, I got an ammo warning for my cannons. I shouldn't have wasted so much shells earlier when I didn't have a clear visual, so keep that in mind. Do not fire on an enemy if you don't have clear visual. It doesn't matter how good your aim is. Don't fire if you don't have a perfect shot. Now, I think that this Hellcat was actually trying to climb up to me, and as you can see, I initiated a kind of rope and dope, not really a rope and dope, because there was never any competition there, and I never really lured him into anything. But as you can see, it places me perfectly on his 6. And if you want to have more tips on how to trick your enemy into a climbing match, I'm going to link a guide to you right now. As you can see on the radar right now, a dot appears. I'm still going to press this Hellcat. I get a critical hit on him, and now the Spitfire comes in. Let's see, what's he doing? Is he going for a head-on? He is not going for a head-on. I'm not going to waste my ammunition there. And, oh, actually, it was a Spitfire Mark 9. Never mind. I went up, he went up, he didn't have the speed, or he finished his loop for earlier. I'm going to go for this Hellcat now, because he presents himself pretty well, and we get another critical on his tail. Now the Spitfire, what are we going to do with him? He's going towards us. I make a little shot there, but that was not going to work anyway. And now I'm going for a loop, and this was a dangerous move actually. I think he could have gotten me if he wanted to. And instead of turning after him, I'll be making another loop here, or a yo-yo actually, and get on a 6. This is where I want to be. I want to be in the advantage. I have slightly more altitude than him. I'm behind him, but he is gaining distance. Of course, I can still punch my war emergency power, but then he decides to turn and to present himself as a target. However, my shooting lets me down again. Let's see what we can do right now. And this is the moment where I thought I was fucked. I'm going to be completely honest. This is the moment where I thought, shit. However, either he didn't realize it or he didn't have any ammunition. I don't think he was strafing ground targets, so I don't think that could have been it. But yeah, that was his best moment to actually picking me off, and he didn't take it. And as such, from now on, it's going to be in my favor. However, I still have to finish him, and I don't have any cannons left. He flew past us there. Let's go for another little yo-yo there. Sadly, right now I have to use the replay function for about a minute. My recording had broken off at this point, and you couldn't see how I was actually looking, but I saw his course adjustment, and that's why I also adjusted my loop. And I don't really get to the position that I wanted. I wanted to be right behind him, but right at this moment right now, I know that I won this fight, and I think he realized it as well. He's joking around with his plane. I think he's telling me, yeah, well, I'm done. And there's only one thing I have to do right now. Now let's actually get him. And as you can see, the guns on this thing, the MGs, don't do much damage, but he is taken down regardless. So there we go. We have no opposition in this match anymore except an AI. So let's go and find this little bugger before the match actually ends, because the enemy is able to capture all our cities. Now I'm flying in the vicinity of C. There is nothing there when it comes to AI, and it's Joy, my dreaded enemy. B, I don't see any dot flying there, so I'm going to be going to go. Well, that was really good English right there. I'm going to go to A soon. Let's see if I can spot him there. I don't see him yet, but he must be there. He must be there somewhere. At base, sometimes they don't take off, but it's not on this map. On this map, I've never really seen an AI that didn't take off. Let's see, he's not above C, he's not above B, he can only be above A. But the pressure is on. As you can see, the tank columns are approaching Bochum. Is that Bochum? I think it is Bochum. Well, B for Bochum, there we go. But I'm not sure. I check around and I have to nail this guy as fast as humanly possible. I look again and there we go. I think I spotted him right there. But let's make sure it's not a wreck and get a bit closer before we confirm the visual. But there we have him. There we have him. We see him. And this guy, my arch enemy. He's a clever one, this guy. He actually surprises me in a few seconds. You'll see this. Let's keep the advantage. I don't want to underestimate AI. AI can be a pain. They can really, really be a pain. Now let's see. What is this guy doing? He's still flying away from me, and I'm closing in. I'm gaining speed. Going towards him here. And now I'm catching up to him really fast. And then I notice this guy is actually coming towards me, this crazy little bugger. So yeah. Crazy man, Joy. You're a crazy man. Now I only got a little shot off at him there, nothing amazing. I'm going to still use the speed that I have to gain a little bit of distance. Then I'm going to turn around and seal the deal. Without cannons, it's not going to be that easy, but this is a reserve aircraft, so a few machine gun hits into the engine should be enough. Let's make that loop. Go around. Start aiming, start planning our approach. We still have a reasonable amount of MG shells, rounds, whatever. And there we go. He's burning, he's down. And we have another kill. Even though AI doesn't really count. And yes, as I just written in chat, that was the most intense fight I ever had, because there was a lot of guesswork in this fight. I never really knew exactly where my enemy was, but I do think that except that one moment where the Spitfire could have nailed me, I actually did fly to my best of my abilities right here. Now let's have a look at the statistics then, shall we? As you can see, there is no surprise there. We are on top with 7 kills. One of them doesn't count. 6 kills. And we get a hefty bonus, but no battle trophy. I had worse matches than this, and I've gotten a battle trophy. I don't get it sometimes. But yeah, their player statistics with 7 kills. Of course, we're going to be up top. However, we can see that there is an enemy there, the Hellcat, who was only strafing ground target because 16 ground target kills there, is actually on top, even though he didn't really help his team out at all. And that leaves us back with this little beauty, the Bf-109 F4. Absolutely beautiful plane. And as I said, yes, this is the one I had, but Gretel deserves something better now. From now on, this camo scheme is going to be on my plane. It brings me luck. And now I'm just going to pimp out my little Gretel. And that is indeed the Battle of Stalingrad camouflage. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the Bf-109 F4. I hope this guide was informative. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you will be able to use the F4 from now on to its best of the abilities if you haven't been doing so already. And as always, have a great day and see you in the sky.